With all due respect, Supreme Commander, you can't possibly be serious about this assessment. First Lieutenant Kha'Zix chittered, his secondary appendages twitching with barely contained amusement. These humans survive their evolutionary process by being, and I quote from the xenobiological report, too stubborn to die? Supreme Commander Vexthor's crystalline eye structures rotated in what his species considered the equivalent of an eye roll. Lieutenant, I strongly suggest you read the full report before— But look at them! Kha'Zix projected a hologram from his neural interface. They're practically bags of mostly water. No natural armor, no backup organs, no regenerative capabilities worth mentioning. They can't even survive in vacuum for more than a few minutes. The only reason they weren't conquered during the standard pre-FTL observation period was that no one thought they were worth the resources. Lieutenant. And their home planet. A death world by any reasonable standard. The gravity alone would crush most sentient species. How did they even develop consciousness while constantly fighting against such oppressive conditions? It's almost comedic. Vexthor's crystalline structures began pulsing with a warning shade of deep purple. Lieutenant Kha'Zix, I order you to— Supreme Commander, permission to volunteer for the human containment mission. My squad could use some light entertainment, and subduing a pre-stellar civilization would look excellent on our service records. The Supreme Commander's outer shell took on a resigned hue. Permission granted, Lieutenant. Report to Hangar Bay 7 at 0600 hours tomorrow. Dismissed. As Kha'Zix practically bounced out of the command center, Vexthor turned to his executive officer. Start the betting pool. How long do you think before he learns why we have that new gravity testing protocol? For Kha'Zix? I give him 3 standard hours after first contact. He always was a quick learner. The XO's shell rippled with barely suppressed mirth, though usually not by choice. The next morning, Lieutenant Kha'Zix led his squad of 12 elite warriors through their final equipment check. Their powered armor, designed for high-gravity operations, hummed with energy as they boarded their assault shuttle. Remember, squad, Kha'Zix announced over the tactical network. This is just a standard shock and awe operation. We land in their largest population center, demonstrate our technological superiority, and accept their surrender. Try not to damage too much of their primitive infrastructure. It's just embarrassing to break toys you haven't even claimed yet. His squad responded with various clicks and chirps of acknowledgement, already treating the mission like a training exercise. Their species had participated in hundreds of peaceful integrations of pre-FTL civilizations. This would be no different. The shuttle breached Earth's atmosphere at precisely 0900 hours local time, its stealth systems rendering it invisible to the primitive radar systems the humans employed. Kha'Zix had chosen New York City as their landing zone, figuring that a demonstration in such a populous area would lead to a quick capitulation. They touched down in the middle of Times Square, their ship's landing thrusters scattering the gathered crowds of humans. Kha'Zix observed with satisfaction as local law enforcement vehicles quickly surrounded their position. Perfect. The humans' leadership would be contacted and negotiations could begin. Citizens of Earth, Kha'Zix broadcast in perfect English, courtesy of their universal translators. We represent the Galactic Confederation. Your planet has been selected for integration into our society. Resist, and we will be forced to demonstrate our technological superiority. Submit, and you will be granted protectorate status with all associated benefits. You have 1 standard hour to— Hey, bug boy. A human voice interrupted his carefully prepared speech. Did you check the weather forecast before parking your fancy ship here? Kha'Zix's sensory appendages twitched in confusion. Weather is irrelevant to this proceedings, human. Now, as I was saying, might want to look up, Chief. The same voice called out, this time with obvious amusement. Kha'Zix and his squad instinctively looked upward. Through the transparent dome of their shuttle, they could see a massive construction crane several hundred meters above them. Dangling from it was what appeared to be a primitive but enormous steel wrecking ball. The cable holding it had been cut approximately 2.3 seconds ago. Oh, that's just not fair. Kha'Zix managed to transmit before several tons of terrestrial steel, accelerated by Earth's oppressive gravity, introduced itself to their shuttle's upper hull. Containment breach in sections 7 through 12! Second-in-command Tixara screamed over the tactical net as warning lights flooded their crippled shuttle's interior. Hull integrity compromised! Atmospheric seals failing! Return fire! Kha'Zix ordered, his voice rising several octaves as he watched humans in construction worker outfits high-fiving each other. Show these primitives the consequences of— Sir! External weapons are offline! That primitive kinetic weapon severed our main power coupling! Impossible. Our hull is rated for— Kazakh's protest was cut short by the sound of metal groaning above them. The wrecking ball, apparently not content with its first introduction, was being wound up for another swing. "Abandon ship! Everyone out! Combat formation Delta 7 once we're clear." His squad scrambled to evacuate, their powered armor automatically adjusting to Earth's gravity as they emerged onto the street, etc. Kazakh had barely cleared the shuttle's exit ramp when the second impact hit, this time splitting their vessel nearly in half. "Form up! Defensive positions! Show these humans what real warriors can—" Kazakh's rallying cry was interrupted by a new sound. The distinctive whine of primitive internal combustion engines, growing rapidly louder. From all directions, human vehicles began converging on their position. But these weren't military vehicles, or even law enforcement. They were construction equipment? "Sir?" Tixara's voice wavered. "Why are they smiling like that?" Kazakh watched in horror as bulldozers, excavators, and various other pieces of heavy machinery began closing in, their operators grinning with what could only be described as predatory glee. "Because," a gravelly voice called out from the nearest bulldozer, "you folks just turned our morning coffee break into the most entertaining demolition job we've had all year." The next few minutes were a blur of chaos as Kazakh's squad discovered several important tactical facts. 1. Their armor, while excellent against energy weapons and designed for high-gravity operations, was not rated for being scooped up by excavator buckets and dumped into concrete mixing trucks. 2. Construction workers, as a species subset, appeared to have no fear whatsoever of alien invaders, especially when said invaders had interrupted their break time. 3. Earth's primitive hydraulic systems, when powered by determined humans and operating in their natural gravitational environment, were distressingly effective at dismantling advanced alien technology. "Fall back!" Kazakh screamed, watching helplessly as two of his warriors were corralled by a coordinated effort of 3 bulldozers into what appeared to be a recently poured foundation. "Tactical retreat! Call for extraction!" "Sir!" Tixara called out, somehow having ended up suspended upside down from a crane hook. "Communications are being jammed." "Jammed? They don't have the technology to—" "Nah, we're not jamming anything," a human female in a hard hat called out cheerfully, operating what appeared to be a primitive remote control. "But it turns out your fancy communication systems don't work so well when they're buried under 6 feet of quick-setting concrete." Kazakh watched in horror as their communication array, which had been thrown clear in the initial wrecking ball impact, disappeared under a wave of rapidly hardening gray sludge. "This is impossible!" he chittered, his translator struggling to keep up with his increasing panic. "We are elite warriors of the Confederation. We cannot be defeated by construction workers." "Oh, honey," the same woman replied, her grin widening. "We ain't trying to defeat you. This is just what happens when you park your spaceship on an active construction site without checking the permits first." 3 standard hours later, a thoroughly humiliated Lieutenant Kazakh stood at attention in Supreme Commander Vex Thor's office, his once pristine armor now covered in various Earth construction materials and what appeared to be several different types of coffee. "So," Vex Thor began, his crystalline structures pulsing with what Kazakh desperately hoped wasn't amusement. "Would you like to explain why I received a bill from something called Local 147 Construction and General Laborers Union for, and I quote, unauthorized overtime, emergency demolition services, and emotional damages relating to interrupted coffee break?" "Sir, I can explain." "Oh, please do. I'm particularly interested in the part where your entire squad was defeated by what the humans classified as normal Tuesday morning construction activities." Kazakh's appendages drooped. "Sir, requesting permission to revise my earlier assessment of human technological capabilities and tactical acumen." "Granted." Vex Thor's shell definitely showed signs of suppressed laughter now. "Though I should inform you that your encounter has already led to some interesting diplomatic developments." "Sir?" "Yes. It seems the humans are willing to overlook this attempted invasion in exchange for access to our advanced materials technology. Apparently, they're quite interested in improving their construction equipment's durability." Vex Thor's translator somehow managed to convey barely contained mirth. "They were particularly impressed by how long your shuttle lasted against their wrecking ball." "And the Confederation agreed to this?" "Lieutenant, in the 3 standard hours since your encounter, human construction companies have submitted 17 different patent applications for new demolition techniques they developed while dismantling your squad's equipment. The Confederation's Xenotechnology Assessment Board is concerned about their rate of advancement, to put it mildly." Kazakh's sensory appendages twitched. Surely they can't be that worried about primitive construction equipment. Lieutenant, the humans have already started theorizing about applying these principles to dedicated military hardware. One of their scientists, upon reviewing the footage of your encounter, was quoted as saying, and I quote, "Wait until they see what we can do with actual weapons." There was a long moment of silence. "I assume," Kha'Zix finally managed, "this is why we now have the gravity testing protocol?" "Indeed. Though you'll be interested to know you've inspired an addendum." Vexthor's shell rippled with undisguised amusement. "From now on, all first contact teams must also check for active construction permits and ongoing union contract negotiations before choosing a landing zone. Sir, requesting permission to transfer to the diplomatic corps, I believe I may be better suited to less direct forms of contact with newly discovered species." "Granted, Lieutenant. Though I should warn you, your first assignment will be negotiating reparations with the construction workers' union representatives." Kha'Zix's translator struggled to find an appropriate expression for the sound he made. "Oh, and Lieutenant," Vexthor called as Kha'Zix turned to leave, "they specifically requested to conduct the negotiations during their coffee break." Addendum to Galactic Confederation, First Contact Protocols, Section 7.3.4. When evaluating pre-FTL civilizations, special attention must be paid to species that have evolved on high-gravity worlds. The ability to survive in such conditions often indicates exceptional resilience and resource utilization capabilities that may not be immediately apparent in their technological development. Furthermore, it should be noted that such species often develop unconventional approaches to problem solving, particularly in regards to the application of kinetic force. Standard technological superiority metrics may not accurately predict their defensive capabilities. Special note regarding humans. Their classification as a pre-stellar civilization requires immediate review. Any species capable of weaponizing construction equipment with such efficiency cannot be safely classified as technologically primitive, regardless of their current spaceflight capabilities. Additional note. All first contact teams are now required to check local building codes, union regulations, and coffee break schedules before selecting landing zones. Failure to comply may result in unauthorized demolition fees and strongly worded letters from human legal representatives. Final warning. Under no circumstances should human construction workers be referred to as primitive within translator range. The Confederation's insurance providers have explicitly excluded coverage for any incidents resulting from such provocations. End initial report. The coffee break negotiations. "Let me get this straight," Linda Martinez, shop steward of Local 147, said while stirring her fourth cup of coffee that morning. "You folks want to negotiate terms for technology exchange, and you chose to do this during our coffee break?" Former lieutenant, now junior diplomatic attaché Kha'Zix's translator struggled to convey the appropriate mix of respect and trepidation in his response. "We thought it would be appropriate, given the circumstances of our first meeting." "Uh-huh." Linda took a long sip from her mug, which bore the text, "I survived an alien invasion and all I got was this lousy coffee cup." "And you're aware that union rates for overtime negotiation meetings are triple standard during designated break periods?" Kha'Zix's appendages twitched. "The Confederation is prepared to offer significant technological advantages." "Yeah, about that." Linda set down her mug and pulled out a tablet. "We've had our engineers look over the wreckage of your shuttle. Gotta say, we're not super impressed with the structural integrity. Did you folks even stress test those materials under proper gravitational conditions?" "Our materials are among the most advanced in the galaxy," Kha'Zix protested, his professional diplomatic demeanor slipping slightly. "Maybe in 0G, Linda shrugged. "But honey, our wrecking ball went through your hull like it was tissue paper. Now, we've got some ideas about improving your alloy compositions, especially for high-gravity applications. But first, we need to talk about licensing fees." Kha'Zix's translator took several seconds to process this. "Licensing fees? Well, sure." Linda gestured to several other union members who were carefully examining holographic projections of the alien shuttle's remnants. "See, during our impromptu demolition demonstration, we developed at least 6 new techniques for materials stress testing. Patents are already pending. If you folks want to incorporate those insights into your ship designs, which, let's be honest, you really should, we'll need to discuss terms." "You want to sell us construction techniques?" "Among other things." Linda's smile widened. "We're particularly interested in those powered armor suits of yours. Great concept, but the hydraulic systems are frankly amateur hour. Our guys have some suggestions for improvements. Kha'Zix fought to maintain his diplomatic composure. The Confederation's powered armor designs are classified military technology. Uh-huh. The same technology that got beaten by a Caterpillar D9? Look, we're not trying to be difficult here, but if you want access to our gravity-optimized engineering expertise, we'll need some concessions. Such as? Well, for starters, exclusive rights to demolition contracts for any future Confederation structures built in Earth's gravity well. Standard union rates apply, of course, plus hazard pay for extraterrestrial work conditions. Kha'Zix's sensory appendages drooped. I'll need to consult with my superiors. Take your time. Linda poured herself another coffee. Oh, and speaking of time, this meeting just ran over into our lunch break. That's quadruple overtime rates, by the way. Supreme Commander Vexthor's crystalline structures were cycling through colors so rapidly they were starting to resemble a terrestrial disco ball. They want what? In addition to the technology exchange and demolition contracts, Kha'Zix consulted his notes. They're demanding we establish a formal interstellar workers' solidarity program. Apparently, they want to ensure that alien construction workers across the galaxy have access to, and I quote, proper coffee break protocols and fair overtime compensation. And if we refuse? They mentioned something about a concept called picketing. From what I understand, it involves humans with signs walking in circles around our landing zones while chanting rhythmically. They also threatened to call something called OSHA to inspect our vessels for workplace safety violations. Vexthor's outer shell took on a distinctly worried hue. What's OSHA? I'm not entirely sure, sir. But when I asked, 3 different human construction workers made this strange whistling sound and said, "Oh boy, you don't want to find out." There was a long moment of silence in the command center. Diplomatic attaché Kha'Zix, Vexthor finally said. Your new mission is to ensure that whatever OSHA is, it never ever has reason to take an interest in Confederation operations. Is that clear? Crystal clear, sir. Though, there is one more thing. Yes? The humans have requested that all future diplomatic negotiations be catered with something called donuts. They were quite insistent about this point. Vexthor's translator sighed. Add it to the protocols. And Kha'Zix? Sir? Find out what these donuts are. Any species that can turn construction equipment into anti-invasion weapons clearly shouldn't be denied their preferred negotiation fuel. Addendum to Galactic Confederation Diplomatic Protocols, Section 12.8.7. When conducting negotiations with human construction industry representatives, the following must be observed. 1. All meetings must be scheduled around designated break periods unless triple overtime rates are budgeted. 2. Adequate supplies of coffee and donuts must be provided. Note: attempts to substitute inferior refreshments have been known to result in spontaneous demonstrations of construction equipment capabilities. 3. Never, under any circumstances, question the structural integrity of human-designed buildings or equipment. Their response typically involves practical demonstrations that strain both diplomatic relations and insurance coverage. 4. The term union-mandated coffee break is now classified as a protected diplomatic protocol. Violation of these breaks is considered equivalent to a minor declaration of war. 5. All Confederation vessels operating in or near Earth's gravity well must now display proper building permits and union certification stickers. These must be obtained through official channels and not, as one junior diplomat discovered, from something humans call a guy who knows a guy. Additional note: the Confederation's legal department is still reviewing the implications of Earth's OSHA regulations on our interstellar operations. Until their assessment is complete, all personnel are advised to maintain a respectful distance from human construction sites, and to never, ever ask, what's the worst that could happen? Final warning. In the event of future misunderstandings with human construction workers, under no circumstances should anyone suggest that they take it up with management. The resulting labor disputes have been known to spread across multiple star systems. Charts and supplementary report. The Galactic Confederation's annual technology summit was typically a dignified affair. This year, however, things were slightly different, largely due to the human delegation seated in the front row, all wearing hard hats and reflective safety vests. And so, the Confederation's chief engineer concluded, our new ship hull design incorporates several revolutionary principles that we discovered through collaborative research with our Earth colleagues. Kazix, now promoted to senior diplomatic attaché after successfully preventing 3 potential OSHA investigations, watched nervously as Linda Martinez raised her hand. Yes, Representative Martinez? Just wanted to point out that according to Section 47.3 of our Technology Sharing Agreement, you need to acknowledge the Local 147's contribution to the reverse-engineered hydraulic systems. Linda took a sip from her ever-present coffee mug. Also, that support beam behind you isn't up to code. The chief engineer's sensory appendages flickered in alarm. The support beam, but this is a temporary conference facility. Yeah, about that. Linda made a small hand gesture, and one of her colleagues started unfolding what looked suspiciously like a portable inspection kit. Show me your permits for this structure. The next 15 minutes involved a hastily called recess, while human construction experts conducted what they called a routine safety inspection. Kazix noticed that several other species representatives were taking detailed notes, particularly about how quickly the humans identified potential structural weaknesses. Fascinating, he overheard a Centaurian delegate muttering. They can instinctively calculate load-bearing requirements just by looking at a building. Are you sure they're not using advanced scanning technology? Nah, one of the human inspectors replied cheerfully. You just get a feel for it after a few years on the job. Speaking of which, he turned to the chief engineer. You're gonna want to reinforce that whole section before we continue. Trust me on this one. But the mathematical models clearly show... The human inspector just smiled and knocked gently on the support beam in question. A concerning vibration rippled through the entire structure. Right, the chief engineer said quickly. I'll call for immediate reinforcement. Later that evening, during the summit's reception, Kazix found himself in conversation with Supreme Commander Vexthor, who had aged noticeably since the Earth situation began. How are the negotiations proceeding? Vexthor asked, his crystalline structures shifting in what Kazix had learned to recognize as resignation. The humans have agreed to share their gravity-optimized engineering techniques, Kazix reported, though they insist on maintaining quality control oversight. Meaning? They want to establish what they're calling an intergalactic building inspection department, staffed primarily by human construction veterans, naturally. Vexthor's translator made a sound suspiciously like a groan. And I suppose they have demands about this department's operational protocols? Just a few. Kazix consulted his notes. Mandatory coffee breaks, comprehensive safety regulations, proper overtime compensation, and something they call pension benefits. Also, they want to standardize construction permits across all Confederation territories. That doesn't sound too unreasonable. Using Earth's New York City building codes as the baseline. There was a long pause as Vexthor processed this information. The same New York City where you attempted your landing? The very same, sir. Apparently their regulatory framework is, and I quote, already set up to handle anything aliens might throw at it. And if we refuse? They mentioned something about organizing an intergalactic workers' union. The phrase, solidarity forever, was used several times, with increasing enthusiasm. Vexthor's outer shell took on a distinct shade of worry. What are our options? Well, sir, our xenopsychologists have been studying human organizational behavior, particularly in the construction industry. They've identified several key concepts we might be able to use in negotiations. Such as? Apparently, humans have something called pizza parties that can be used to boost morale during difficult projects. And there's a beverage called beer that seems to play a crucial role in after-hours problem-solving sessions. Are you suggesting we attempt to influence human construction workers with food and drink? Not exactly, sir. Kazix's appendages twitched nervously. The last time someone tried to skimp on break room provisions, the humans introduced something called a slowdown. Productivity dropped by 73%, but somehow every single regulation was followed to the letter. It was impressively passive-aggressive. Vexthor's crystalline structures dulled in defeat. Submit to their demands. All of them. And Kazix? Sir? Find out what this pizza is. If it has even half the diplomatic impact of those donuts, we need to secure a stable supply immediately. The next morning, as Kazix watched human construction crews installing new safety features throughout the conference facility, he received an urgent message from Confederation intelligence. Sir, his assistant reported, we've detected unusual activity in several member species' industrial sectors. What kind of activity? It seems, well, after yesterday's demonstration of human construction standards, Several worlds have reported spontaneous organization of their own construction worker unions. They're all demanding similar break schedules and safety protocols. Kazakh's translator struggled to convey his mix of horror and admiration. They're spreading their organizational structure to other species? Yes, sir. The movement already has a name. Workers of the Galaxy Unite. Their logo is a coffee mug crossed with a safety helmet. Before Kazix could respond, Linda Martinez appeared beside him, somehow having heard the entire conversation despite being halfway across the room moments before. Don't worry too much about it, she said with a grin. We'll make sure everything's up to code, though you might want to budget for more break rooms, and coffee, lots of coffee. Is this what you planned all along? Kazix asked, suddenly understanding why the Confederation xenopsychologists had started taking anxiety medication. Let's just say we recognized an opportunity for some workplace improvements on a galactic scale. Linda checked her tablet. Oh, and by the way, your office's coffee maker isn't up to the new intergalactic workplace safety standards. We'll need to fix that immediately. But we don't even drink coffee. Doesn't matter. Regulation 47.B9 clearly states that all workspaces must have proper break facilities. Don't worry, though. We'll handle the installation. Union rates apply, of course. As Linda walked away, Kazakhs couldn't help but marvel at how a species that had barely mastered interplanetary travel had managed to export their labor regulations across the galaxy. Oh, and one more thing, Linda called back. We're thinking of starting an exchange program. You know, sending some of our guys to other worlds to consult on their construction projects. Any thoughts on gravity-adjusted overtime rates for off-world assignments? Kazakh's translator gave up entirely and just emitted a small whimper. Emergency addendum to Galactic Confederation administrative protocols. Notice, due to recent developments in interspecies labor relations, the following updates are effective immediately. 1. All Confederation facilities must now include designated break rooms equipped with human-standard coffee makers, regardless of whether local species can consume coffee. 2. The concept of Monday mornings is now officially recognized as a pan-galactic productivity-affecting phenomenon, requiring additional break time allocations. 3. The phrase, "it's 5 o'clock somewhere," has been added to the official Temporal Relativistic Standards Manual. 4. Construction projects in varying gravity environments must account for both physical stress factors and union-mandated comfort considerations. 5. The official Confederation emergency response hierarchy has been updated to place angry construction workers above imminent supernova in terms of priority response requirements. Special note: any attempts to automate or replace human construction workers with robotic systems must first be approved by the newly formed Committee for the Prevention of Unnecessary Technological Solutions to Social Problems, CPUTS. The committee meets every second Tuesday, coffee and donuts provided. Final warning: under no circumstances should anyone attempt to explain to human construction workers that certain laws of physics are non-negotiable. They take this as a personal challenge. An end emergency update.